everybody. Welcome to this episode of Amazing Things. Thank you for joining us. Sorry, thank you for joining us.
Deathcast.
This is the Deathcast episode of Amazing Things Cast. Amazing Things, the podcast where every week we one-up each other with amazing facts, and we try to bring you a little bit of infotainment.
Are we trying to one-up each other?
I'm trying to one-up you, assholes.
I'm doing this wrong.
Yeah.
I just like using infotainment when I
Infotainment
explain
is a
it to
good
people.
tag.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. So you can follow us on at Amazing Things, spelled with 3 S's at the end, on Twitter. You can like us on Facebook. Just look up Amazing Things, and you'll see a picture of Bert with his eyes wide, and it says "Mind Blown." That's us. You can like that and stay up to date. We post some amazing facts on Amazing Things Facebook page.
Don't go looking on Google Plus because that's not us.
So that's something else?
It's a shit.
Wow.
Yeah, it's something else.
All right, good to know. What else can you do? You can leave a review and subscribe to us on iTunes.
Because it's pretty sad that it's just us leaving us reviews.
We don't know that. Nobody knows that.
Okay, one anagram of Jim and one of your Xbox gaming tag.
So
Could
just
be a fan.
like us.
Could
Just
be a
like
fan.
us and leave us a review. All right? Now, don't listen to Negative Gilly. My name is
my name.
Spencer, and that is...
Negative Gilly.
And you are...
Positive Polly? Kyle. I'm Kyle.
And Ian, do you want to...
No.
Silent partner. Jim can't make it tonight because he's dead. So we covered death this week. It's a pretty heavy, broad topic, but I
Just
think
approaching it. Like, it's our other subjects have been topics that you can do. Like, you can type in sitcoms and a bunch of useful stuff will come up, but you just type in death on Google, and it's like a game called Death Something, and it has nothing to do with the actual topic.
And I tried to even keep it somewhat lighthearted, and I found some interesting non-dark things, but it's a pretty heavy subject overall, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also beautiful, in a way.
In a way.
In a way. I mean, you can't run from the Reaper. Am I right, boys? Or am I...
I'm not sure if you're right.
I think
I'm not
Bill
sure.
and Ted
Touche.
Yeah, we might get into that.
Can.
Bill and Ted proved that. Ghost Rider / Drive Angry proved that. Final Destination proved that you can. Spawn.
Crow?
The Crow proved that. So there's a lot of
Oh,
things.
but then it didn't because he actually died in that
There's a lot of scientific
movie.
movies. Yeah. Brandon Lee died.
He did.
Yeah, he got offed.
Benjamin Button made it kind of confusing.
We're going to get even into a squid that's very much like Benjamin Button.
What about
Or
lobsters?
a jellyfish, I mean. What?
What about lobsters?
I don't know about lobsters.
They're immortal. If we didn't eat them and kill them, or they didn't kill each other, they
Really?
live forever.
I didn't see anything about that.
Oh, I
Can you-
know.
can you
we
Google
could do
that?
a whole podcast
I've
on
heard
lobsters.
of this lobster myth as well.
But
so
is it
I'll
a myth?
back
Can you
that
look up "lobsters are immortal" on your computer right now?
Yeah.
Just look it up. So as
Beep.
Galen looks up this false fact, we're gonna break down what is death. The most common cause of deaths in the world right now are heart disease, followed by stroke and other cerebrovascular diseases, and in third place, respiratory infections. So those are the three main worldwide causes of death. Makes sense to me.
I would have thought it was AIDS.
No, not AIDS. I guess, per capita, it's not. Suicide is a huge cause of death in certain countries. Some countries, that actually is in third place, which is shitty and depressing. But that's
what
a
country
lot of suicides. There's a lot of suicides in, Russia. There's a lot of suicides in China, actually. A ton of suicides in China. Lobsters don't get older, just bigger and hornier. Is that a fact?
The internet.
You can't make a bold subject line like that.
Yeah,
and not
according
back it
to
up.
according to Cracked.com, which we all know to be a worthy distributor of reliable information.
I was just looking for the quickest source of information, not the most trustworthy.
Wow. So this is saying that a restaurant tried to serve a 20-pound lobster, and it turned out it was 140 goddamn years old. That's an old-ass lobster. I'm not... keep going down. Let's look at this. They don't really age in the sense... So this is something that we'll actually get into, I guess. Maybe that's part of that group of organisms.
We will.
But for now, where does the word death come from? Word death comes from Old English deo. I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm not smart.
Deo.
Beto deo. Right?
How did I start that?
Yeah, you're
Daylight
welcome.
Commons.
Catchy.
Which in turn comes from Proto-Germanic daulas, reconstructed by etymological analysis. This comes from the Proto-Indo-European, which we talked about last week.
Proto-European, one of the oldest languages.
Pi,
The pie.
stem deu, which means the process, act, or condition of dying. So pi, once again, making its return.
Yeah,
from last week's
interesting.
episode, which
The
is really
language
interesting,
episode.
which I actually didn't put two and two together until right now that was actually pi that came up with this term. Anyway, so that's neat. What is death? Do you want to talk about like the?
Yeah, well, when I looked into it, there's like you can take the scientific approach to looking into death, or
Right.
you can take the
Hippie?
like the philosophical,
Right.
the hippie religious. I guess that's the same category. Hippie religious.
Hippie religious.
Approach to it, and then it's just more about what happens afterwards.
Right.
So
Right.
I don't know. I don't even know.
Did you get into like the biology of it though?
I did, yeah.
Okay, so let's hear some of that.
What I learned about death is
You sound more professory.
What I've learned about death
Whoa!
is that there's a gland within the center of one's brain called the pineal gland.
Okay.
And the pineal gland I can't do this for that.
That's
much
okay. So
longer.
what does the pineal gland
But the
do?
pineal
I
gland
was so impressed. I was so ready to be impressed.
it's like a drug culture, friends. The pineal gland excretes dimethyltryptamine,
Okay.
which is this chemical that when you boil it down is like one of the most powerful psychedelics. If you're to take it orally, the Mayan culture, I think, started doing it, grinding it up and using like one chemical to bypass another, which was the first time science recorded that.
That's cool.
And they would give it to like 13-year-old boys, and they would explain that like this drug will be your process into manhood because it's the chemical experience your mind has when you die. So you can do this drug and experience that before you die. And it was supposed to be what made a man really see what was important in life and
That's
experience before they actually die. And then, you can't really learn that lesson.
Did you know that? So speaking of that kind of same thing, I just had to look up his name to make sure I was right. But you know Aldous Huxley, the author?
I do.
So when Aldous Huxley was on his deathbed dying, he had 100, I guess that's milligrams, of LSD injected into him intramuscularly.
Yeah.
So that he would just fucking go
That's the
crazy.
best way to
trip
take a
out as he was
psychedelic.
dying. Yeah. Which to me, like, that sounds amazing. Like that sounds like a really awesome way to experience something
Ian
crazy
disagrees.
like that. You're dying, it'll like elevate you to like I don't.
Well, that's the thing, and there's consistencies when I looked into cultural texts about death, because you start looking into like, okay, death is something that's been around since the beginning. Everyone knows it follows you like a shadow.
Right.
It catches up to everybody,
Right.
human-wise,
Human-wise.
excluding some jellyfish and lobsters in the world that we don't get to first.
That we will get to.
We'll get to. Yeah. What?
Okay, so let's talk about these lobster things. Let's segue into that. Do you want to segue into this right now?
Okay.
So, is that next on the topic? What's next on that list? What did you write? I can't read your handwriting.
Oh, well, we were...
Our oldest human, so I don't know if
Okay, so let's talk about oldest human. Let's talk about aging and death, okay?
we don't have to.
Well, this fun fact.
Okay.
Jean Calment of France is the oldest official human being to have ever lived. Born February 21st, 1875, died August 4th, 1997. She's 122 years, 164 days old.
That's crazy.
That's fucked.
I didn't know that was the oldest.
Really,
Grunge killed her.
really, 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 really old.
But going back to like the text and the psychedelic nature of death, just the idea that like when you die, no matter what you believe, your brain's gonna have this, and then depending on the way you die, if you're decapitated, it won't be this way.
Do you know when you're decapitated, your head technically lives on for 20 seconds?
I believe it. Yeah, the chemical process, like electricity, keeps going in your brain for.
I'm not saying that it can function normally, but it's conscious of what's happening.
There haven't been a whole lot of studies on like the chemical process after death because it's such a touchy subject.
Yeah.
Like,
So if you decapitated yourself and sewed the head back on perfectly within 15 seconds.
Don't think that's possible, but
well,
if you could,
that's what I mean. That's like they haven't. I mean, excluding Nazis who were doing God's knows what, like with death research and like actually killing people and having them hooked up to machines, so they knew that like if you kill someone this way, here's the chemical process of what your body does, right? Like, do your organs shut down? Does you get fluid in your lungs?
Also,
what
apparently,
happens?
your sense of hearing is the last sense that goes as you're dying.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that until I was
Did
researching
not know.
this
That's
out.
an amazing thing.
It is pretty amazing, right? Have you guys seen that movie Martyrs? It makes me think of that.
No.
It's about. It's kind of like two movies in one. It's really fucked up, but it's basically about this French death cult It's kind of technically like a torture porn horror movie, but it's this
Go
French
on.
death cult who kidnap young girls and basically torture them to the brink of death. And it's run by these really old people who are all about to die, and they want to know what dying is going to be like. So they torture people to the brink of death in hopes that they can witness a near-death experience.
And explain it to them or something?
Yeah. And it's really, really fucked up. And
It
really
is fucked
surreal.
up.
It's really depressing. But it's anyways, it's a lot
Well,
like that.
the
It's
subject
really
itself,
interesting.
again, like we were talking about language and it being one of science's hardest problems. I think death and just there's no way to explain it, right? It's,
Yeah, I mean, who knows what? I mean, you can have we can get into near-death experiences right now, because I guess that talks about how people interpret death.
Well, and it goes along with the chemical composition of the brain.
Yeah.
And like again, understanding what happens to the body when you die, how you die,
And
right? Like there's some natural deaths when they say died of natural causes. I think that sort of suggests that the body will do its natural thing when it dies, versus a beheading.
Well, and so in speaking about what people experience when they die, so in Western culture at least, there are some very classic NDE experiences, near-death experiences.
Near death, of course.
Yeah. So like stuff like the notice of an unpleasant sound or noise, a sense/awareness of being dead, a sense of peace, an out-of-body experience, a tunnel experience, rapid movement toward and/or sudden immersion in powerful light, communication with the light, intense feeling of unconventional love and acceptance, encountering beings of light or beings dressed in white, receiving a life review, receiving knowledge about one's life and the nature of the universe. These are all things that I think we interpret or we associate with near-death experiences. But when you look at other cultures' versions of near-death experience, there's I'm blanking now. I feel like an asshole. But I think it's in Korea. Maybe it's not. Or maybe the Philippines. But when people have near-death experiences over there, instead of this, they suddenly picture themselves in the palm of this deity, basically being judged. And so it's like a whole different thing, but everyone there says, oh yeah, I had a near-death experience, this is what I had. It's like second nature to them, but it's because their belief system is so totally different.
It's suggestive, just like the nature of any, like if you accept death as like this chemical release in your mind, because it happens to everybody. Like
Totally.
biologically,
For sure it
this
does.
is what happens.
Yeah.
The pineal gland releases dimethyltryptamine, and just before you die or on the verge of death, you do go on this massive trip.
Yeah.
Like, because you can do this drug and not die.
Yeah.
So you can do the drug and be like, whoa, that's kind of what... And you see very similar descriptions of, like, people take it intramuscularly. It was Dr. Rick Strassman who did the only really, like, government-approved test on DMT, which was, again, like, something that we knew about for a long time, but then with, I guess, people protesting the war and doing drugs and the association between the two and the government cracking down, it just became so illegal, like one of those drugs that not even science can study.
Right.
So
yeah, it's really interesting, and I feel like these days, apparently, with recent developments in cardiac resuscitation techniques, the number of NDEs has increased significantly because more and more people are almost dying, basically,
I guess.
Which makes sense. But then you have things like that book being turned into a movie, I think with like Greg Kinnear, called like that, The Proof of Dying, or Proof of Heaven, that's what it's called. And it was allegedly, I mean technically, it's written by this like little kid who almost died and saw heaven and saw God and stuff, and he ended up writing this book about his experience. He's just a little kid, and someone's like, this little kid couldn't have made it up, and all this stuff. But then as you start researching it more, you realize his dad is actually a really right-wing Bible literalist minister. So it's like, of course this kid thinks this shit. Like, his dad literally thinks everything that happened in the Bible is 100% fact, you know? So of course his kid pictures this.
When we were talking about the suggestive nature of, like, drugs too, right? Like, when you take a drug and you have a preconceived notion about what it's going to do to you, it can have that influence. Well, they say that this, this drug that goes through your mind brings out like your manifestation of whatever the afterlife is.
Right.
So with the the Eastern culture, with seeing a palm being related to Buddhism. And actually, like the Buddhist death culture
I wish I knew
has.
what country that was. I feel like a dumb racist for forgetting it. But
do you want me to pause? You can look.
It's probably more of a regional thing than a country thing.
I can't remember where it was, but it was. I was listening to a podcast, and they were just talking about basically different cultures' interpretations of near-death experiences, and like how some of them are like so completely different than ours, you know?
Yeah.
Which is neat.
In terms of visuals, and that's the thing, when people describe their visuals, like we take that as like black or white, but it can just be, again, that person's manifestation of what it's kind of supposed to be like. If death was trying to communicate with you, I'm sure it would try and take on like a form of something that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
And actually, it's the Tibetan culture that has the book, the Bardo Thotral, the Book of the Dead, that actually has like names and processes for like all these different stages. That if you compare like global research on NDEs, you see like sort of different stages of those levels being described by people's visuals. Like if you generalize it, it's pretty crazy.
I was on the same podcast, again, I'm forgetting the country, but they were saying how, whereas generally speaking, Western society, when we have these near-death experiences, we report light and it's warm and it's nice and you see peace and shit. This other country, their near-death experience, most commonly reported, is you die and then the equivalent to the devil basically comes and gets you and it's like, okay, time to go to hell. You're going straight to hell, and you get down to hell and you're about to go to hell, and then they are like, oh, wait a second, you're somebody else. We thought you were somebody else. And then you come back to life. And so, like, for them, a near-death experience is like, I almost went to hell. I have to clean up my life. Yeah. So it's, like, totally different than just, like, I was at peace. I saw my dead grandmother, Like, it's like a scary fucking wake-up call to these people. It's really, which is super interesting, It's neat.
Bunch of Harry Potter Dementors just show up. Oh, no!
Exactly.
Well, and that's described, too, in a lot of death culture. There's always, like, a yes and a no. There's a good and an evil about what can happen to you, and that depends on if that society has that moral judgment of things, right? And most societies were religious based when they started, so there's always some sort of form of a bad death trip, like the ones that people don't report light, the people who describe like a darker experience, they get, like, it was really hard to find actual accounts of those things from people who wanted to talk about them versus people who have near-death experiences and just want to tell people about how great it was, because it's generally, like, especially if you haven't done drugs, it's pretty great.
Yeah, but if you see, like, if you were about to die or you thought you were dying, you see the angel of death and this big dark shadow in the corner of your room.
And the thing about this drug, too, is that it makes you forget. Like, the brain itself needs to believe that there's a biological function going on, or else it just shorts.
Right.
And so, like, it has to forget that experience for you to make sense of life again, because it's so easy to go off the rails.
Right.
There were some really interesting follow-up stories I was looking into about like the before and after of people who have almost died and have said that they've seen something like that. Yeah. That just, like, some people just cannot get their shit together ever again.
Yeah, I read the same thing, where that, like, we generally think of, oh, like, you had a near-death experience, this is, like, your second chance, you must be so relieved, but it actually just fucks a lot of people up. Yeah. Like, it wrecks them. Yeah. It's, like, something that a lot of people actually don't come back from, or they think it's so amazing that they're constantly trying to kill themselves afterwards because they want to get back to this warm light, which is a really crazy thing that
I've read too about, like, people who go missing after it. Like, there were a bunch of missing reports because apparently they would just, like, they'd wander off and be like, there's no real point to really trying to be a part of what you've got going on as far as the society goes.
Apparently, statistically, little kids who have near-death experiences, like while they're little kids, end up leading very full lives because they think it's this, like, really neat experience, and so they want to live life to the fullest. Whereas adults who have this often get very depressed, and, like, it fucks them up. Which is, like, an interesting take on things.
Well, I feel like that's just life. I mean, generally kids are like, and adults are like, fuck this.
Yeah, that's true. Everyone turns into fucking Kathy and Dilbert.
Exactly.
What do you guys think happens when you die? What do you guys think happens?
Well, I've put some thought into it.
Okay.
I grew up religious.
Right.
But I don't think that in any way influences how I feel now.
Yeah,
I think it did at a point, but I never really bought the whole, like, the standardized depiction of, like, a yes and a no.
Yeah.
Like a heaven and a hell, and that's just, like, somebody judges you.
Yeah.
It just didn't make any sense to me at all.
Right.
So looking into the science of it, and actually, I was in a bad car accident, and I was legally dead on the side of a road for a little while.
Right.
And waking up, you just go through kind of a roller coaster of, like, trying to recall what happened, because it was a head injury too, so for me it was like just trying to regain a memory of how I got in the hospital.
Right.
But then through researching, and it was actually Joe Rogan and his podcast about DMT, dimethyltryptamine, that got me onto Dr. Rick Strassman.
Yeah.
So I very much think that, like, hopefully I die in a way that it's natural causes.
Right. So something that more like you just drift off peacefully type thing. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, or even if it sucks for like 8 years and then eventually I die,
Right.
like there's still like organs shutting down is still technically a natural process, even though it sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, you can be made comfortable, but
yeah, I don't want to live in a hospice for like the last few years of my life.
and that's our culture too, is just trying to keep people alive and sort of like up on a shelf so that we don't have to feel sad about them being dead or feel bad about them dying around us, because it's a really long process dying of natural causes, or most diseases too.
Right.
And most people, when they have someone who's dying in their lives, like, when you see them, you're like, oh, you'll be out of the hospital and we'll be dancing tomorrow, Grandma. But then, like, it's so much more rewarding to actually be like, hey, I know you're dying.
Right.
Let's talk about it. Like, are you scared? What do you think's going to happen? And,
Yeah.
like, actually having that conversation, which I had with a grandpa, like 3 days before he died. And he was a religious man who had just given up on his religion because he was dying. He had a disease that he prayed would go away for like 20 years, and then it just killed him.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I guess that just caused him to lose
So
faith.
yeah, that caused him to lose faith. And so the last like week or two of his life was just really emotional.
Right.
And I was the first person to be like, I was high, so I just walked in and I was like, hey, you're dying. Whoa. I had a friend pass away once. It sucks, but like, we love you. And it was a really rewarding conversation.
Right.
But again, like, the subject, people don't know how to handle it.
Right. So what do you think? When you die, do you think it's like this psychedelic experience?
Yeah, I guess. I feel like until the chemical process runs its course, right? Like, there's still neurons firing off in your brain. There's synapses doing their thing. Like, your heart rate's stopped, but like your body, like, it takes so long for your body actually to die.
Yeah.
I think and again, like, there haven't been a lot of studies about like hooking someone up to a machine and like just watching them die,
Right.
and recording it.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure there have, but it's written in a language I don't know how to read.
Yeah, and I feel like that's something that, like, at least at this point in the world, science isn't advanced enough to
It's
say,
not.
this
it's
is
not. Yeah.
a definitive answer.
It's certainly not focused on it because there's
Yeah.
no purpose to knowing.
Right.
I guess, but yeah, I think if that runs its course, you eventually just like don't even have the same conceptualization of existence that we do right now.
But then what do you think? Okay, so after that, what do you think happens to, like, do you think your consciousness goes off into another,
I think
plane
when
of
you like,
existence,
I've smoked DMT, and what I had was like a feeling of a loss of time, that like maybe it was like 60 years that I was like in this, like I was out on a rock just lying on my back because I couldn't function. I had a lot of strong visuals.
Right.
But yeah, and then I just think everything, like, the universe expands, you watch yourself create and destroy the universe, you get, like, every replay of everything, and then it just goes off.
Right. Yeah, I guess I kind of think the same thing. Like, I feel like, like, the chemical reactions and stuff aside, I think it's really neat, and, like, I feel like I don't believe in a God. I don't necessarily believe in an afterlife. I don't necessarily believe in souls, but I feel like there's something with our consciousness, you know what I mean? Like, I think there's more to it than we realize, and I think that something happens with that maybe afterwards. What? I don't know, and I think that definitely our bodies just rot, Like, I don't think anything magical happens.
Side note on that body rotting, because Jim, who can't be here tonight, had a big article written about these, like, biodegradable urns.
Right.
And how, for example, when your body dies, like, imagine it decomposing in this like metal box that like you can never really like be the earth and all that hippy dippy but like I put it in my will actually that I want one of those coffins.
I like those things. Something else I think you touched on, those things where you can get turned into a tree, basically, like they mix your ashes somehow. How does that work, do you know?
Yeah, it's like a little biojar that they bury,
and you grow into a tree.
And you grow into a tree. That is pretty cool.
Like, I mean, I think of other things like, I feel like I should be an organ donor because who gives a shit? I don't need these organs, And I feel like part of me also thinks it'd be cool to like be put on a mini Viking longship and have my friends shoot flaming arrows at it.
Oh, hell yeah!
It sinks. Anyways, yeah. So I think all these ways would be cool ways to technically go once you're a dead body. But at the end of the day, space burials also neat. But I mean, I think at the end of the day, and I'm going to segue into this right now, I would prefer not to die. But I don't mean I don't want to die now. But I mean like full on immortality. Like, I want to know what this world is going to look like in 500 years, you know? Like, I think it's going to be super neat. I want to know what it's like when we finally have, like, intergalactic travel. You know what I mean? Like, I think all that shit's awesome, and I'm bummed that I'm not experiencing
See,
it.
I was going to say, like, in the end, I don't really fucking care what happens to my body, because I'm clearly not using it. It's more about preserving, like, the physical thing.
Yeah.
But humanity's obsession with the afterlife has corresponded with that, like, equal, if not surpassing obsession with how to beat it.
Yeah, I mean, so, like, I'm just looking at this, like, so life extension science, also known as anti-aging medicine, indefinite life extension, experimental gerontology, biomedical gerontology, is the study of slowing down or reversing the process of aging to extend both the maximum and average lifespan. Some researchers in this area call themselves life extensionists, immortalists, longevists. Those who wish to achieve longer lives themselves believe that future breakthroughs in tissue rejuvenation with stem cells, molecular repair, organ replacement, even some people are saying like nanotechnology and shit will send that into us and it'll repair things like... Oh. I don't know that we're going to necessarily see this in my lifetime, but I wish we would, just because like I always thought it'd be awesome. Like even just like vampires and shit, when you read about it when you're a kid, like, oh yeah, these guys have been around for like 500 years. I know that not really. I'm not a moron.
But yeah, vampires are just hiding, waiting to make us all immortal, and we'll all be best friends and live in skyscrapers.
I'm not a total idiot, but I mean, in the world of fantasy, within the world of fantasy, they get to see the world change over 500 years, and think about how much it's changing right now. Like, don't you guys think it'd be awesome? Like, if you could, would you live in your current age, shape? You could get into better shape, say, if you went to gym. But in the current age and body that you have now,
yeah, I mean, so far.
The current body that you have now, would you live for another? Would you choose immortality? Well, not aging immortality. Like, you could still be killed by like a bullet or something. But would you choose? Like, your body would stop aging from right now.
I don't think so, because I think after a while I'd get obsessed with the notion of staying alive, and I'd be so afraid to get into a car. Like, you know when you're in a car with a friend, and they have that shaky little pass on a highway, and you're like, hey, we could have all just died, but we didn't, and that happens. Yeah. No, I'd be a hermit. But, that being said, kind of a fantasy to be a hermit.
Yeah. What about you? Would you do it?
No, I'm not overly psyched on like next week, so I feel like I'm like, there's 500 more years. I gotta figure out what I'm gonna do.
See, like I think it would be hard because, like, you know, like I love my fiance. I want to have kids, and I don't want to live past them and see everyone I love and like die around me. But at the same time, the selfish part of me is like, oh yeah, but it would be cool to see aliens one day, maybe. Like, it would be cool to live in a world of Mass Effect.
See, I feel like if you can wish for immortality, you could just wish for maybe, like, the aliens to hurry the fuck up and maybe show up tomorrow.
Well, I mean, if we're just fucking...
If we're wishing. If this is Wishcast.
If this is Wishcast, that's what I would wish for.
Oh, man, we should do a Wishcast.
Wishcast.
Anyway.
Awesome. Anyways,
well, there's biological things.
Christmas
Wishcast, but there's biological things that sort of already are doing that.
That can do that. So they are called...
Lobsters.
Shuffle some papers around.
They are. It's part of something called negligible senescence, and it refers to the lack of symptoms of aging in a few select organisms. More specifically, negligibly senescent organisms do not have measurable reductions in their reproductive capability with age or measurable functional decline with age. Death rates in negligibly senescent organisms do not increase with age as they do in senescent organisms.
What?
They don't age.
You want to go again?
So they just don't age?
It's kind of what Galen was saying with lobsters.
The Benjamin Button thing.
So that's That's slightly different.
Okay.
So there's this thing called its Latin name is Tortopsis dorni. It's known as the immortal jellyfish. It's a species of small jellyfish which is found in the Mediterranean Sea and in waters of Japan. It is unique in that it exhibits a certain form of immortality. It's the only known case of an animal capable of reverting completely to a sexually immature colonial stage after having reached sexual maturity at a solitary stage. So basically what it does
And they also reproduce?
It can reproduce, but
Crazy.
it basically just gets really old and then starts reversing that until it gets back to like a little tiny polyp thing, and then...
Oh shit! Yeah, and it lays dormant sometimes in that pebble stage until waters reach. Actually, I think it does really well in like toxic water levels.
I don't know.
So
I know that it, being threatened by with danger, like say
Yeah,
something,
that's
it
the
can
same
also
one.
trigger this,
That's
and
the
it'll
same
start
one.
suddenly
Yeah,
going
when
reverse.
people kill it, like it's been recently popping up more than before because waters have been reaching this toxicity level that all these pebbles down on the ocean floor that get stirred up are actually like these just Benjamin Button jellyfish that are popping back up. Yeah, so fishers have been cutting them up on the decks of their ships, but danger is like they just dump their sperm and eggs into like a pile of their death. And that's how they actually spawn more.
Go, oddly enough, as well.
Yeah, they're like a weird asexual thing that they don't even like have sex naturally. It's just death triggers them.
Crazy.
Yeah, and they're saying that they only exist in like dead zones of the ocean. The ocean again, Galen.
The ocean.
So again, Japan, where it's just a really toxic area.
Going back to that negligible sense thing that we're talking about, though, it's I mean, from what I gathered from that lobster page you just showed us on Cracked, the foremost authority in science.
Yep.
I think it's kind of like that same thing. Like, it'll just keep getting older and older and older, and unless something else kills it, it's not necessarily going to
unless
die.
it's physically destroyed. Yeah.
Which is cool.
Like a Terminator.
Yeah, exactly. Lobsters are a Terminator.
But what do you think would be a reasonable way, like we've seen all the movies, what would be the most reasonable way for people to discover an immortality thing? Like, do you think it'll just be finding like that fountain in the Amazon where it's like, oh my god.
Harnessing the power of the lobster. That'll be
science.
I mean, I think science, yeah. I mean, I think nanotechnology is neat, but I think it will probably be something in like a living organism that we find one day, you know? Like, we'll get something in like this jellyfish I just talked to, and we'll be like, oh shit, we can actually inject that into ourselves, and we're not gonna die, you know? Or just some sort of like stem cell rejuvenation process, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well that's the evolution part, right? Like you get something that can regrow organs, which we already have.
Yeah.
Like you can manipulate these things.
And pretty soon, they're going to be actually, the technology exists now, so I think it's really just a matter of time, that blood will start being able to be reproduced in like a factory-like setting, just because of like scientists have like harnessed the ability just to create all different types of blood, and so that way it's also not going to be a thing like, oh, you have a really rare blood type, oh, we need to get a donor like that. It's like, oh no, we just mass produce this.
Move over oceans, we're gonna have way more people for you to deal with. Let's fill it up with sand. Let's just make a beach.
It's also like that's a big deal too, because a lot of people die from faulty blood transfusions in poorer countries, especially. So if you don't need to worry about like, oh, we accidentally got this blood from someone who's sick, like, no, this blood didn't come from anybody. It's 100% pure.
I've seen True Blood. This doesn't end well.
Learn the lessons of True Blood.
Vampires, werepanthers, we're fucked.
Werepanthers? That's a thing?
And that stupid ass show it was.
I've never really seen that show. That sounds fucking awesome, though.
Doesn't sound bad.
I want to watch it.
It's bad news.
Is it?
We'll talk about it after.
He's just way more
like
politically.
season 8 or something? How can it be that bad?
Well, you know, when things are so trashy, people are like, yeah, I love it. That's what's happening.
Right.
No, I don't know anything about that, Galen. I went to finishing school.
What else? If you guys had to choose one way to die that's not of natural causes, what would it be?
I think falling.
Really?
I've always fantasized about like when I'm up really, really high and there's no guardrail or anything like that. Or I've done high ropes courses and stuff where you're harnessed, but like you can unclip it and be like, I could just fall.
Right.
It's a sub fantasy.
I'm afraid of heights, so that's not for me. What are you gonna say?
If I'm gonna die in some non-natural way, I want it to have the ability that my gravestone could be a pun. I just want to die in some stupid ass way.
Something with a rhyme.
That my parents are like, I thought of something really awesome to put on that gravestone.
Like you kicked a bucket and it was full of scorpions?
Yeah.
You kicked the bucket. Be
I want people to walk by and just go, as they walk past my tombstone tree.
Do you guys want to have tombstones? I don't want to be buried, I guess.
I don't know. Yeah, I was looking at, actually, when we were talking about death, I was looking at how people dispose of dead bodies. Like, what do people do with dead?
Yeah.
Was a really cool
Shoot
topic.
them into space.
Space is neat.
That's a good one.
It's expensive, but it's neat.
Although we already look pretty gross when you look at like all the dead satellites and active satellites that form our atmosphere. Like, as an alien,
One dude's
I'd think
almost
we
at
were
Pluto.
gross.
Really?
Actually, he's at Saturn now.
Huh.
He's making his way.
That's cool.
It was like the guy who was like most sure that like Pluto was a planet and was teaching people it was a planet. he got shot, and he's like,
We're just warning other aliens what we're like. We don't know shit about
Yeah,
them.
that's cool.
Stop
so
sending.
speed it the fuck up so I
No,
can see
then
them
they
before
know
I
our
die.
weaknesses, right? I mean, it's going to be a resource battle.
If they can make
some
it here,
point.
they're already more advanced than us, and we're dead anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah,
we
yeah,
can't make
yeah.
it there, so...
No, because human tenacity and Riddick.
No, and Armageddon and Independence Day.
But yeah, what do people do with dead? I really like what native people
What did they do?
did with just like building a little thing out of sticks or like putting them in trees to just like decompose and
That's
fall to the
neat.
ground eventually. It was pretty cool sounding.
No, you
Ian
don't like
says
that?
no,
Sounds like
no.
a nightmare.
no tree hanging death.
Or just like laid at the, like not even buried under anything because I hate the idea of being confined in some sort of like, I just want to be laid down under like a willow tree.
I think
If I could, with some Dave Matthews playing.
I think I don't know anyone that has died that hasn't been cremated just by chance.
Oh.
But I mean that pumps a ton of toxins into the atmosphere. Burial pumps a ton of toxins into the earth.
Yep.
I would be fine being tossed into a ditch. I don't give a shit. But there's these like body farms that they teach like forensic scientists at, where it's just basically a big field wooded area, and if you donate your body to science in their name, you just basically toss your corpse out into a field and let forensic scientists find you and analyze shit. And it's like, yeah, that's fine. Do that to me. I don't give a shit.
Mass grave.
Yeah, like
Sign me up for the
not even,
mass
like,
grave.
but like a fake murder scene, basically. You know, like just walk through this field, find a dead body, and
They
like one of
teach
them is
people
me.
that way?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess you have to.
yeah, exactly. And that way, like the elements can actually get to you and shit like that. You know,
I would even be kind of cool with like being used as a movie prop. Like if I was in the next Die Hard, like, oh, that's my brother's body you see falling off that building. That's why it's so
I don't think that's
realistic.
how movies
I'm
work.
pretty sure they don't do that.
No, they
I think
don't.
you misunderstood the term stuntman.
They don't currently do that. I'm just
throw a dead
saying.
body down the stairs.
But if they start, I want to be the first body
subject-
thrown
Okay,
out
now
the
the
Bruce
roof.
subject
Willis
of
go line where that
euthanasia.
dead body landed.
Carl Rathers, can we get the dead body?
Oh. There's
Cameron?
one tribe that does burial by air,
Whoa, how does that
which
work?
pretty much they put you on a mountain, cut you up into little bits, and then feed
Oh,
you
you're
to
right.
birds,
Yeah,
and then crush your bones after all the flesh is gone, and then feed that to smaller birds.
That's just
the
a
birds
lot-
just poop you out everywhere.
That's a lot to ask, though, of your relatives, I feel.
Well, it's one of them Tibetan, so unless-
One of
Yeah,
them
again,
Tibetan.
interesting the
This
difference.
fucking racist on the keyboard over here.
The
One
difference
of them
between East and
Tibetans.
West. That North Tibetan,
Oh yeah,
whatever that is.
Well, there goes our Tibetan demographic that we're hoping for.
Fuck.
Thanks, Galen. I was reading.
It's just the monks.
Just
So
the
if
monks.
the monks are listening
Just
to
the
our
monks.
podcast,
I guess we'll get all
monks.
those Chinese endorsements now.
Yeah, that's good.
Yay,
Yeah.
us!
Did you guys know that about approximately, I don't know if it's an exact number, but about 200 dead bodies line the routes up to the top of Mount Everest? People
Yeah.
who have just died,
Yeah.
and like it's too treacherous to try to get them back and forth, so they become like these weird landmarks for people trying to climb. They just see these dead, preserved bodies all around them.
Yeah, there was
Fuck
that photo series just
Yeah,
went out
yeah,
like
I've seen that,
not
yeah.
too long ago. Someone actually tried to find as many as they could and catalog
What's
them,
that?
or at least find existing photos of the ones you can't even find anymore.
Yeah, it's fucked up. But like, imagine like climbing Mount Everest is a pretty epic thing to begin with.
I feel like that should be a video game where you climb Mount Everest and achievements are just like you pass it. And
Are those are the same
You passed
points?
Old Man Williams. Achievement unlocked.
Take his coat. It's warmer than yours.
New pickaxe. You store old.
That's the
man
loot
content.
drop, dead bodies on the way to the
Yes.
top of Mount Everest.
They're all old man.
I knew we'd get there. There's our high point.
Thanks, Ubisoft.
Well, I think we threw out some of our best ideas, but again, the subject, like language, was just so huge. It was so hard to find a place
Totally.
to really relate to other people. Because when you talk about death, and we're doing a podcast, right? Like we want people to listen to it and interact with it.
Wait, we're doing a podcast right now?
We are. We're not just in a room doing this for our own benefit. I hope.
I got a pop quiz for you guys. What do you think the oldest living organism on Earth is right now? Single organism, I guess.
Do you want me to say the thing you said earlier? Or
Lobster.
do you-
Lobster.
No, what did I say?
I think you said tree.
Tree. Guess how old it is? Yeah.
10,000.
Younger.
5,000 years old.
5,600 or 563 years old. It's a Great Basin bristlecone pine. It's measured by the ring count to be 5,600 5,063 years old. It's the oldest known tree in North America and the oldest known living individual tree in the
How
entire
many
world.
hearts are carved into it with like S plus G?
Only an asshole like you would carve a heart into that.
Oh.
It would kill it!
You were the S.
Correct answer. It's Grandmother Willow.
Here's something else that I
How
found.
do they get a ring count without killing the tree
I
though?
don't know, maybe a branch or something like that?
Couldn't
That's
you
only-
just-
No, that wouldn't
couldn't
work.
you
It needs to be from the
just drill
trunk.
like a really small
Yep.
and each
Yep.
and then it would
That's
probably
how.
still be
Yeah,
fine.
that is how.
Okay.
You're right. Okay, here's
Down
another
over
thing.
the hole.
The oldest mammal species that I could find is the bowhead whale, and it lives to be at least 211 years old. It's pretty impressive.
That's pretty good.
And then another neat fact is tuataras. Have you ever seen? It's like a type of lizard, and it's technically born with. It's like a super primitive form of lizard. I guess I don't even know if it's technically a lizard, but super primitive. And when they're first born, they actually have a third eye on the top of their head that they eventually lose as they
Cool.
mature. But just like this weird vestigial eye. But we don't know a lot about them. They're egg laying, but they give birth to live birth. That's the weird thing about
Live
them.
birth lizards?
Yeah, which is
Oh,
weird.
that is weird.
But they also we don't know too much about them, but we know that as they get older, they don't lose their sexual reproduction abilities. And one male in captivity reproduced for the first time when he was something like 90 years old, and then he had like a bunch more.
So
like when he was 100 and something. So
Make
like,
sure we add a little bit of that
Yeah,
when we splice up
exactly.
that,
With that jellyfish.
That jellyfish
and
science.
And the
them
lobster.
lobsters. What else? Oh yeah, ladybugs. When threatened, it's a pea aphid. That's the type of aphid it is. It'll explode itself, to protecting other aphids and sometimes killing the ladybug itself. Have you guys ever heard of that? I've never heard of it.
I've seen Starship
ladybugs.
Troopers, so I believe it,
Right.
but I've never heard of that.
Yeah, ladybug exploding itself.
Or aphids exploding themselves to kill ladybugs.
Isn't it? It's a type of aphid.
Type of aphid.
It's a pea aphid.
Huh.
So it protects the other aphids around it, like exploding? I don't know. I didn't really look into that fact. It just sounded neat.
Science, Mr.
Yeah,
White.
amazing!
Death amazing!
What else is a neat, amazing thing? Oh, premature burial. Do you guys want to talk about that?
What?
Okay, so premature burial, also known as live burial, burial alive, or vivisepulture, means to be buried while still alive. And so it was obviously more common back in the day before medicine and science was more advanced. So it'd be like, oh, this person looks like they're dead. Let's go bury them. And
They used to bury people with like a bell in
yeah,
their
so
coffin.
because of that. So
Yeah.
eventually, safety coffins started existing in the 18th and 19th centuries. So many people were being buried alive that they would do things like have coffins where you could actually open it like this, like a subway kind of rotating latch thing inside, so you could get out. They had bells,
Just for the
flags.
wrist.
Wouldn't there still be
Probably.
a lot of dirt there?
But they buried it so that like it was like designed so that you could get out. So like the bell came right out of the dirt, and so you ring it, and they'd have a night watchman patrol the graveyards listening for bells, and if you heard it, they'd dig them up.
So
Like
a
before
coffin's
people-
like a little bomb shelter for your corpse.
Kind of,
Yeah.
just in case.
Before people knew about comas.
But like I started reading about some of this shit. Lazarus syndrome was something that it's a spontaneous return of circulation after failed attempts at resuscitation. Its occurrence has been noted in medical literature at least 38 times since 1982, named after Lazarus from the Bible.
From the Bible.
My grandfather actually was a stillborn, and the doctors put him off to the side. He was the firstborn in his family, and obviously this is in the 1920s in poor Ireland. But so they put him off to the side
On the dead baby shelf. that
basically.
Every Irish hospital
And
had.
so everyone was like, oh, this sucks. And they wheeled his mom out and his dad. And then a nurse was cleaning up and she noticed my grandfather twitch. And it was like, I think he's moving now. And then they looked and he ended up being alive and fine. But so his middle name was Lazarus because he came back from the dead.
Just like the 101st Dalmatian.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, that's pretty cute.
Anyway, being buried alive. So I started reading about this shit. And sometimes the way they found out people have been buried alive is fucking horrific. So, like, at least one a report of an accidental burial dates back to the 14th century. The philosopher John Duns Scotus, who lived from 1266 to 1308, was reportedly, upon the reopening of his tomb, found outside his coffin with his hands torn and bloody after trying to claw his way out of his own tomb.
Yeah.
And so many things of like
What a guy.
they would find like women, like this one woman was like had like woken up in her coffin, didn't know which way is up, like panicked, spun around, and when they dug her out, for some reason they dug her out because like I think her mom had a premonition or something that she'd been buried alive, and her back was up, and she'd been trying to push the coffin up like that. She'd lost all her fingernails. She'd start pulling out her hair because she was panicked, and she died of suffocation. But like, it's horrific to think. Like, imagine being buried alive, like just waking up and all of a sudden being like, wait a second, I'm in a fucking coffin. Like that to me is like one of the scariest.
Yeah, if you don't know the 1-inch punch, you are not in good shape, sir. That's why I practice.
Good, it's a good thing to practice.
Constriction in general, or just like even being caught in like a landslide or something like that that's probably, if you like, what's your worst way to die? If you could pick a way not to die,
I think burning alive or like being eaten alive maybe would be like, in my mind, pretty awful. But like anything like that would be horrific and scary. But I think burning alive would just be so painful.
I heard when you burn alive, you actually die of suffocation
from the smoke
because the fire's taking all the oxygen.
Right.
I mean, it'll hurt.
It'll hurt at first.
But it's, unless it's like something that sticks to your body,
right?
Like boiling alive.
Huh. Oh god.
Boiling alive.
Ugh.
Now there's a shit way to go.
Yeah, that'd be fucking awful. Yeah, there's a lot of awful ways to die.
Yeah, I think about how drowning would be bad, but my dad actually was pulled out of a river, and he said they did CPR on him, and he said it was like the most comfortable. Like, he was panicking for a while, but that second where your lungs just like you pass out. Yeah, it's just like everything goes black, like you just black out.
How old is he when this happened? Like a kid?
No, he was like 14, I think.
Yeah, so basically,
like It's a Wonderful Life age. Lost the hearing and what? No, that didn't happen.
What else? What other amazing facts do we have? Do you know that left-handed people are more like, or die sooner than right-handed people? 3 years. I think they have a three years earlier on
unnatural
right-handed people, which is weird. The electric chair was invented by a dentist, which is fucked up.
Yeah, I did know that. Gross.
Ancient Egyptians shaved off their eyebrows to mourn the death of their cats.
Yep.
Which is awesome. In
Bringing that back.
In 1845, President Andrew Jackson's pet parrot was removed from his funeral because it wouldn't stop swearing.
That's
awesome.
If we had a bell, I would ring the shit out of it, because that is my favorite fact about death. I mean, we've talked a lot heavy and soft, but that's amazing.
Is that what we should be ending on right now? Andrew Jackson's parrot swearing to the point where it needed to be removed.
Memo to self: get parrot, keep it alive.
I mean, there's a lot we could talk about still. I think we're running out of time, but stuff like death culture is a big deal in places like Day of the Dead and Santa Muerte in Mexico.
It's taken less seriously too, right? As a cultural thing, it's something that. I mean, I wonder personally about how people receive this podcast and like who will actually want to listen to it, because I think a lot of people do, like, they're uncomfortable by it, but cultures like Mexico
embrace it. Yeah,
they embrace it and make a day out of it.
And whereas like Santa Muerte is not technically recognized by the Catholic Church, it's a very highly worshipped saint in Spanish in Mexico, but also like into like the southern United States. There's a big thing in Chicago recently. There's a big Santa Muerte following because Santa Muerte, if you've never seen a picture of Santa Muerte, basically looks like the Virgin Mary but a skeleton instead of
well, that was
flesh and blood.
Like the death culture as a whole, when you look at it globally, right? Like our sort of the classic goth version.
Yeah,
like the people who actually celebrate death.
But like they're venerating her for like her healing and protection and safe delivery of the afterlife, and saying like, you know, the only thing that's certain is death, so please spare me. You know what I mean? Like it's not as gruesome as Western society would make it out to be.
Yeah.
Obviously, like the Catholic Church has a problem with it because it's not an official saint, and they're like, oh, like it's sacrilegious and stuff. And Santa Muerte does definitely have a huge following, not only in like the working class society in Mexico, but also the criminal underbelly and stuff.
And people always misassociate death with the devil,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
Or some sort of like evil purpose.
We can't wrap our head around. Oh, you're looking at these skeletons; it must be sinister. But it's like, no, it's a really beautiful thing for them. They're venerating their ancestors, which is supernatural, like a really natural thing to do, and it's been around for ages. You know what I mean? It's interesting. I actually just watched a really neat documentary on female mariachi musicians in Mexico and the hardships that they go through, but it also deals a lot with them playing during Day of the Dead, and it was really interesting. It's like the vast majority of people who, not like, it seems like a big majority of the people who worship Santa Muerte are women who also like obviously have a way harder time than men everywhere in the fucking world, you know? So it's just like this thing of like helps you through the hard times. You know, I don't believe in that stuff, but I think I think it's cool looking, and B, I think whatever helps you get through the day, you know?
Well, that's I think people's main fear in life. Like, everything you do is to, like, make yourself live long and happy and healthy.
Yeah.
And
These
a
people in
part of
prison,
our
yeah.
death culture, like the 27 Club,
What's that? Oh, yeah.
right? Like, all the celebrities who die at 20, and that being sort of the live fast, die young, rock and roll age. Like, it's a different lifestyle choice, but it's in no way less valid than someone who makes it their business to just do yoga and complain about cigarette smoke.
Right.
But you get those clashes of culture every day, right? Like, the death and life culture have always been pinned against each other for some time.
Yeah.
Whether it's like a personification of the devil, or whether it's just someone who is so scared of dying that they put health on such a high pedestal that they clash with someone who's, like, threatening that in their mind, right? Like, being afraid of a criminal element or someone who smokes. As a smoker, I'm just mad. I'm just mad about it.
I think we covered a lot about death today. I mean, I know that we didn't get as technical as maybe we could have.
How do you?
But how do you, A, with this subject, and B, with such a huge subject? And
I was really hoping you guys would get a mortician in here.
We wanted a mortician as well.
I think this is one of the
And
subjects
you would
that
just spend 5 minutes talking about cutting up dead bodies.
I would do a death part 2 in a while, like when we can get somebody to come in and really we can just grill them about death.
And I mean, for now, thank you for listening. I guess go listen to some Carcass. That's a band made up of all morticians. They met at a mortician convention. Really good metal band. If you want to listen to that shit, morticians
send
at a
us.
party.
I was kind of thinking that it'd be nice if people could send us their play out tune. If you had one song that was going to be played at your funeral, like your play out tune.
Yeah.
Hashtag death list.
I don't know what. I always hear songs that I think. And this is super morbid. I always hear songs that I think, oh, that'd be a cool song to play at my funeral.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You can put that on your will. That's the great thing about having a will. Everybody, this week brought to you by Wills. Go get a will. They're awesome. It doesn't have to be about where your shit goes. It can be about where you go.
Yeah.
Wills. Think about it.
Tell us what you also want. Tell us the thing that you found most interesting in this. Tell us about how, like, your least favorite, the scariest way you can imagine how to die,
or tell us a legit near-death experience.
Yeah,
I'd like to get some of that going on.
That'd be really great.
Maybe we'll do a Deathcast Part 2.
Yeah. If you ever want to be a guest on our show, let us know. Tell your friends and family about this. Thank you so much for listening. Galen shaking his head no. Don't tell your friends and family. He is the worst mascot we could possibly hope for.
He's cute, though. I wish this were a video podcast.
Cute.
He's cute.
He is cute. He's like a rejected Henson creature. So
take it?
He'll take it. So thank you for listening, everybody. That's been Deathcast. Maybe we'll have a part 2 sometime. I know this got a little more philosophical than maybe we ever have before, but I think if any topic, this makes sense.
We were pretty pious about coffee, too, though, to be honest.
Yeah, but that was a lot of listening to our expert that day and just being blown away.
That's true.
But thank you very, very, very much for listening to another episode of Amazing Things.
Amazing Things!
Amazing Things! Good night, everybody.
Cut.